Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Going Virtual. And we're featuring the success story of the VMAE Summit. But before we go into our webinar proper, I'd like to direct your attention to your questions pane. So if you have any questions during the webinar or you're having audio issues, please feel free to use this questions box and we will monitor it throughout the webinar. And if you have questions for the presentation, we'll take note of it and we'll answer them at the end of the session. So speaker introductions, you see on your screen, we have WebCourseWorks Client Success Manager, Matt Harpold, and VMAE CEO and Director of Special Projects for AVMA, Ralph Johnson. Okay, so Matt, take it away.
Perfect. Thanks, Odessa. Appreciate the introduction. Not positive if saying completely proper will be, I guess, as we go through, but I'm really excited to have our customer, client, partner, and a friend of mine, Ralph Johnson, joining to go through our experience of the virtual event. So just to go through and get things started, Ralph, do you mind sharing a little bit with us, everybody here, just a little bit of background on VMAE, about the organization, and then a summary on the virtual event?
Sure, and happy to be here. Hello, everyone. VMAE stands for Veterinary Medical Association Executives. So we are a small but mighty organization of about 120 members, representing 80-ish different organizations, exclusively in the veterinary medicine sector. Our purpose is to help the executives of VMAs, Veterinary Medical Associations, create thriving organizations and provide effective leadership within the veterinary profession. And we try and accomplish that in a variety of ways. Our members are diverse in their settings. They might be at a local VMA, like the El Paso VMA, for example. They might be at a national organization, like the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association, and lots of state and species or specialty organizations. And their financial resources vary because their memberships vary, and their staff sizes vary in correlation with those other factors. So I mention that because that was an important element in us thinking through a virtual summit and how we could address a spectrum of needs in that summit. In terms of what VMAE does, I think that there are association professionals on the webinar here, so you probably have an intuitive feeling for what we do. We are really focused on supporting those executives to help them be more effective as an association professional and as a person who has the opportunity to lead their organization in conversations and actions around professional issues that confront the veterinary profession. And it's a lovely profession filled with great people, but nonetheless, it is subject to all of the factors and trends and pressures and opportunities that we all see as associations. So we have no shortage of issues on which to focus our attention. A thing that I really love about VMAE is that it's almost this little laboratory, because we're not competitors. We can create something together and leverage the heck out of it. We share resources, we share expertise. Everybody gives freely to their colleagues of what they've learned and resources that they create that might be useful to somebody else. And I reference that again because that was kind of a design principle for the summit. So maybe I can talk about the summit for just a second and why it came into being. We were scheduled to hold our summer conference right now. Literally, as we speak, we should be in San Diego at an in-person meeting, which is a 10,000 person gathering for the American Veterinary Medical Association. That clearly was not in the cards as a prudent gathering to convene. So the AVMA decided that it was going to go virtual, and they're going to do something in August. And we decided to go virtual and chose to do something at the end of June because moving into the virtual space is critically important to our organizations. And a stat that maybe is relevant for why we felt so motivated around this: veterinary medical associations serve licensed professionals, right? Each state licenses them for the opportunity to deliver veterinary services. And part of that licensing is sustaining competence through acquiring continuing education courses or offerings. A typical VMA earns about 52% of their revenue from continuing education offerings, sponsorships, exhibits, etc., the whole package. So not only is it critical to the VMA to meet the mission of service and relevance to their member, but it's critical, it's baked into what they do and what that revenue picture looks like, and the resources they have to power other programs. So in hindsight, or in the rear view mirror, we probably should have been moving much earlier into virtual space to do educational offerings. If there's things to be thankful for in the pandemic, maybe it's that it motivated us all to make a move and to consider this as part of the mix of how we deliver educational opportunities to our members. So that was a motivation for us to go as early as we could. It put lots of pressure on us and our partners, and we'll talk about our partners, I'm sure, as we run down this path. But we needed to do something to be responsive to our members. We abandoned the program that we had originally set forth for San Diego. Abandon maybe seems cruel. We postponed that content till a different time because we thought doing a pilot to demonstrate what a virtual conference could look like, feel like, engage like, would be useful to our members as they were considering the same thing. So that's how it came into being, and it had to happen very quickly, and I'm sure we can get into that too. But that was the purpose, was really to demonstrate the efficacy of the model and to illustrate the possibilities that come with using a platform and having a good team of folks to work with. So.
Absolutely. I love the silver lining of taking the current events and finding something positive out of that. But
why not?
Right? Why not? We have to in this day and age. But so as we go through in our discussion, we're going to go through some of the challenges, some of the solutions, takeaways, everything from there. But obviously, this is a very loaded question. Obviously, the challenge was putting on a successful virtual event. But just to go in a little bit deeper, is there a specific hurdle that you needed to overcome early on that comes to mind, or even during the project setup, the entire process?
I think the compressed timetable was certainly a hurdle. We signed our agreement with Web Courseworks on May 29th, and our conference started on June 26th. Now, the time that we signed the agreement, we had already done planning and done scope of work. So some design work had been done, but there was still an immense amount of execution to do. So get as long a time frame as you can, right? But I think we're all operating in this environment of decision making, and execution is all going at a very fast pace. So it is possible, though not perhaps desirable, to offer to function in such a compressed timetable. So that was one hurdle. Another hurdle that perhaps is a double-sided coin was there were really 4 partners involved in this. So VMAE as the sponsoring organization, Web Courseworks as the technology provider. We had content providers, and I'm going to reference them by name if that's okay, because I'll elaborate on that, but it's the team at Tagoras, Tagoras. And then the 4th entity was the American Veterinary Medical Association, because we have VMAE has a very collaborative relationship with AVMA, and we were able to essentially ride their platform that they had already constructed with Web Courseworks. So though it brought some challenges in terms of here's another entity that we have to run system processes and authentication through, at the same time, they had experience that I didn't have that helped build the context for us to execute in such a compressed time frame. So it truly, the pluses outweighed the minuses of having a 4th partner. As it turns out, Tagoras and Web Courseworks had worked with each other previously, and unknown to each other spoke highly of each other, which was very reassuring to me as we were going through the kind of design stage and putting the partners together. So, and I think maybe the 3rd challenge to mention is just, to me, it was like immersion in the deep end, and learn a lot, view a lot. Fortunately, there was a ton going on in the association community for people doing webinars and kind of playbooks coming out. So I was drinking lots of water very rapidly to try and, glean what I could from that. And kind of putting together a timetable. It was just like making it up as we go. It would have been beautiful if there is like this master timetable of do this today and do that tomorrow. And we just kind of had to create that as we went and be comfortable with a little bit of fluidity in that. But hey, we made it. Wham! We got out of the pool, and we managed to pull off a great conference. So.
We did, and always great to hear. Important thing to highlight, yes, it was turned around in about a month, not recommended always in the timetable, I think is an important thing when planning a virtual event.
Yeah.
But, so going on to the planning side of pieces. So everything that kind of goes in, whether it was before we actually had everything set in stone or those steps right away before actually constructing the virtual conference, how did you, I guess, plan around attendance and the expectations for going into that?
VMA is pretty fortunate that kind of the bond between members and the bond with the organization, both of those are very strong. It is, very much a community that loves to connect and share, talk, socialize. We have execs who have been at their organizations a couple of decades. Once you get into veterinary medicine, it's pretty hard to leave because it's great people, because of the human-animal bond and all of the great things that connect with animals in our lives, and with this profession that serves those animals. So highly bonded group, loves to get together. I believed that we would continue to have an audience for this offering, and particularly because it was so the topic was so timely, but didn't know it was a crapshoot. And there were conversations with the board about, are you committed to this? Do we believe in this enough to commit extra resources, as it turns out, because we wanted to do this well, both from the content side and the technology and delivery side. And the board said, yes, we're going to invest. This is the right thing to do. We will wish for attendance, but we're going to do this in the best way that we can. And the platform allows us to have on-demand access, which we used in positioning the summit with our members too. It's like, okay, you want to see it again, you got on-demand. You couldn't make a session, you have on-demand, or you can't make any of it, well, great. Register and you've still got on-demand. Through the end of the year was our offer, because there was very rich content that people will be able to revisit as they move through the process and go, oh yeah, I know there was something on that point, and they can go back and mine that. It turned out very well with our members, and the bond that we hoped for truly was manifest. And in fact, we had as many, and perhaps even a few more people of our members than usual. We had a great turnout from our partners, and I know you want to talk about partners and a couple of the things that we did to service our partner relationships. And we actually had, we made an offer to our execs if they wanted to bring a staff member along, because some have education directors, et cetera. And so we had a number of staff people participate in our program that typically aren't traveling to our program. So
nice.
So it turned out well.
That's good. Kind of going, you mentioned partners. So common question a lot of people have is, how do you approach finding the partners, and how did you find the right, I guess, working relationship amongst the 4 groups?
So we call our sponsors strategic initiative partners. So I'll refer to them as our partners, because it's very much a mutual relationship of fulfilling mutual objectives. They are immensely significant to us, because if you do the quick math of 120 members at $271, that doesn't get us very far. It is our partners that truly power the work of our association. So we wanted to make sure that the relationships and engagement that they value might take a different form, but we wanted to make sure that we could provide it, because they are usually with us in person, and they're in the classrooms with us, they're in the social events with us, we're interacting, throughout the whole thing. So how would we approach this? We have a roster of 16 partners at 5 different levels of support. I'm pleased that 10 of those partners stepped forward and took us up on the offering that we made to them, which we charge them no money for, because they're already making a significant investment. This was stewardship on our part to support that relationship. Mm-hmm. So depending on their level, they got opportunities to do, I'll mention 3 things. One was, with Web Courseworks, we created what we called partner portals, so that each one had a descriptive page with a photo of their key representative and contact information. They could post digital assets as well, so we allowed them 1 video and 3 other assets, so a PDF detailer or whatever they wanted to put up, and essentially a corporate video talking about their role in animal health and all good things, right? Mm-hmm. And to incent people to go there, again, this was a Web Courseworks platform capability that we leaned on, was to track our participants' visits to those partner portals, because we use that visit information to qualify people for what we ended up calling the super prize. We thought we'd get a few people putting things in, and our partners put in great things. Web Courseworks contributed a lovely fleece jacket. I shouldn't set you up for other requests here, I guess.
Yeah, thank you.
But there was an iPad and other electronics in there from our partners. So it was a really great super prize. And so that kept driving people to make a visit and spend a moment looking at the partner information. The other thing that we did was, irrespective of their category of support for us, we invited them to do a 30 to 60-second welcome video. And when we would come back from a break, we'd roll one of the partners' welcome videos. Mostly they abided by our time constraints. Some took liberties and, okay, we were generous. But what was so great to see was everyone was different. They were all welcoming, but the message was slightly different. Their setting was different. They were all highly authentic, personable, kind of couldn't have been better for making a connection with who that company representative is and kind of connecting with our members. So that turned out really great. And I'd encourage anybody, if you're, an opportunity like that just seemed super and really valued by our partners as well.
Very nice. Kind of on that same note, so we talked about a little bit the attendance side, the partner side. Common questions around the pricing pieces. So how did you determine that price on a virtual versus your in-person events?
I had been watching a lot of conversation in ASAE community conversations. And what resonated with me and ultimately with the board was we were going to price this exactly the same as our in-person conference. And that's coming from the point of what value are we delivering? Not from a standpoint of in-person, because it's in-person, you can price it up, or virtual is less valuable. It's absolutely not. We found in this, and I think our belief in that proved true, timely, rich content, accessible on demand following the event, high levels of engagement in various ways throughout the conference of our members. So I feel like we really delivered on the value proposition that we offered to our members. So same price.
Yeah, very nice. So going on, taking a look at a little bit of the solution. So when conference actually starts and we're actually going through, can you share kind of the session layout between live, recorded? Was it a little bit of a mix?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with our structure, which took some kind of debate for us to get to this. But we ended up running our program over 4 consecutive days, a Tuesday through Friday, and we landed on 1 to 5 p.m. Eastern time as our slot, believing that was courteous to our West Folks colleagues to not make them start sessions at 6 a.m. or something ridiculous, so that could work and that it would be consistent every day so that you could kind of have a pattern that you were going to rely on. We did find in some feedback that this is a big deal. I think you have to know your audience and how much kind of desk fatigue and technology engagement fatigue they're willing to commit to. Breaks is important, and I'd say more breaks are better than fewer breaks. So we kind of worked around 50-minute sessions and 10-minute breaks, and people get antsy, but my thing is, hey, if you're watching, stand up and watch, or look out your window and listen. You have lots of opportunities that you don't in an in-person meeting room, right? And I think people have to make a commitment that I'm dedicating my time, attention, and focus to this undertaking. So staff, don't bother me now, I'm engaged. Put a note on your door, turn your phone off, make the commitment that your mental attention is going to be engaged in this program. So a little bit of self-management, a little bit of, structural stuff that all comes together. But it worked really well. And I think we had very smooth execution in this in terms of the solution. And we kind of divvied up responsibilities. So my colleague who's out in Washington State was running the Zoom rooms and doing that background piece. The Web Courseworks team was on the line in case we had any glitches, and we did have one. And if it's okay, I'll mention that because I think it's a useful example. The Tagoras team was on, and there were 3 of them. So 1 or 2 could be presenting, and 1 or 2 could be monitoring the chat streams and making sure that we were paying attentive or answering in the moment. And I was just kind of hanging out, and I'd host the breaks because we wanted to use them as meetup opportunities, or I'd launch with some comments depending on what the session was. So we each had a role, and it worked really well. And one of the tools that Web Courseworks provided was a Slack account for all of us to be connected in the background, which was immensely useful when a little gremlin at Zoom managed to uncheck one of the check boxes that had been verified in advance of the session that it was checked, and it resulted in us having a 10-minute, 11-minute gap that we weren't able to get that session going. But because we had the Slack availability, everybody was chatting. We, updated our attendees. We think we're going to be back online momentarily. Just hang with us, which they did. And we were able to recover. I think everybody is pretty generous when you encounter a technical glitch like that. But thankfully, kind of together, we had thought through what are the backups and the backups to the backups, right? So we had an approach to be able to deal with that 11-minute gap. So, and aside from that one moment of panic, everything else was, smooth delivery, just everything clicked along just as we hoped and expected it would.
And always something, even in a live conference, something like that always happens, whether it's a microphone or not, just a different layer when it comes to
door. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there's always something.
Yeah.
But so I would say most common question everyone always asks is the networking piece. You don't get the hallway chatter or seeing your colleagues and everything like that. I'm a big fan of your networking piece, probably one of the more creative sides. Do you mind sharing about the wine tasting and how that went, please?
Yeah. Again, this is a group of pretty long-term acquaintances who have been able to be in great destinations and do fun things. So a lot of us are wine enthusiasts, and we've done wine tastings in a number of places. So we thought, why couldn't we do a virtual wine tasting? And our friends at Emeritus Vineyards in the Russian River Valley of Sonoma County were gracious enough to say, you know what, if you take orders in advance, we'll give you a special arrangement on this Ruby Rosé that's fabulously delicious. And we'll ship it overnight to your folks so that everybody can chill it and be ready to enjoy it together. And they made Maya from their tasting room staff available to us for 45 minutes of conversation about wine, about Emeritus and their approach to winemaking, and this particular rosé. And we just had a fun conversation and toasted away, and it was a great social opportunity that was germane to our crowd and our interests. So worked out really well. Great fun. Yeah.
It was very cool. I was excited when I learned about it.
Add that a surprise to me out of this was really how engaged I felt and how engaging it was. And, you know, just doing the little things like, hey, we set up a Zoom room for the breaks, and people could hang for a minute and chit chat aside from any content directed stuff. We did breakout rooms as part of the content to both to demonstrate that, but to convene smaller groups for interaction, because everybody's antsy to, you know, I want to gather and chatter. So, you know, yeah, it's not quite like gathering in the bar and yucking it up and giving people a hug, but that's our environment. And I was pleasantly surprised at how well this format could deliver on a lot of the needs that we feel as humans when we want to interact and learn together.
Yeah. And I just love the creativity behind it. So you can apply that in many ways, whether it's chocolate tasting or some other types of activities where you can plan a little bit before. Yeah. I'm included there. Quick note to everybody listening in, we recognize it's just at the noon hour Central Time. We're going to go a little bit longer and have questions available. If you do have to go, that's fine. We'll have recordings sent out and available to everybody. So bear with us as we go through here. So kind of one of our last stops here is the results of it. So I guess the simple question, would you consider the event successful?
Without question, absolutely is the answer. And, you know, you can put several dimensions on that. One was, did we deliver on a timely topic that had relevance to our members? Check. Did we deliver in a relatively seamless way, except for our 11-minute gap? Check. Did we, even though we didn't have a specific attendance goal, did it seem like we got the attention of our members? Check. You know, do we have an ongoing resource now available to them to assist them as they build their framework for moving into virtual education? Check. Did we get positive feedback from our partners about an innovative approach to them and our desire to make sure that they had engagement opportunities? Check. So, you know, it's really all good. It was a great experience, and we know that this is going to be part of our future. And even as we are able to get back to in-person opportunities, I think for us, and particularly for our members who deliver for credit and for revenue, this is going to be a lasting part of their mix of delivery options for their member education.
Nice, very good. So going over kind of that lessons learned part, I know you mentioned a little bit of what you learned. Do you have any kind of major lessons learned that you had aside from maybe the interactive side from attendees?
I think the lesson, a big one for me, is just, you know, you can do it. Dive in. You know, okay, you're going to be in deep water, but, you know, thrash around if you need to, but you're going to come to the surface, and you're probably going to, you know, swim to the edge and raise your hands in triumph. So I would say choose your partners thoughtfully, have a process to it, be clear about as many of your objectives as you can be, because partners are responsive to that and want to help deliver on those objectives. So clarity in that is good. And, you know, just realize that it's a, you know, it's a loop of test, refine, repeat, test, refine, right? But we found our way, and, you know, I think we ended up with a great experience. So just go forth, prosper, right? Do it. You can do it.
Yeah, it's perfect. So it sounds like you mentioned it a little bit, but are you planning to do a VMAE Summit in 2021? Maybe change content, I guess. What's your thoughts on that virtual delivery for next year?
not a specific plan beyond that. This will be part of our ongoing mix of options. You know, we have a fall conference scheduled in November, and I don't know, seem to be lots of members who are saying either my association won't let me travel, or my family's made a decision that unless it's a family emergency, we are not going to undertake risks associated with travel. So that's a deliberation that's that's going on, and so stay tuned. News at 9.
And I don't think you're alone in those decisions.
Absolutely.
Coming up, kind of
Yep.
looking into
Yep.
whether it's those hybrid live streaming ones where there are some people attending and some not. It's just a common issue for, I think, everybody in this day and age.
Yep.
So we already touched on some of the lessons learned. Let's stop at that number one suggestion. You go in, if somebody hasn't even thought about doing a virtual event and this is their first day, what's first step recommendation for them? I know we would.
I think I would review some of the resources that are out there that, you know, various companies have created or various associations. There's a lot of material out there. If you want something, ping me. I've accumulated a bunch of stuff. But really, there are now a number of kind of semi-playbooks about, in very general, I mean, it has to get really tactical and specific too, but if you're just at the front of this, you know, kind of some general process steps, the 10 most important things, you know. So just read up, do a little homework, and then start asking questions. I would suggest people go to the Tagoras website. They are educators at heart, which is why we wanted them to provide our content. They just are so skilled in delivery as well as rich in their content. But they have a number of channels on their website that they have reviews of learning management systems. They're got lots of information about, you know, how to develop an RFP if you're going out to partners and help, you know, do spec and scope. So there's useful resources there.
Perfect. Well, that brings us to kind of our last step of the webinar. Are there any questions from anyone out there? I know we're a little bit over time, but want to make sure to have time to address anything that might come up from that end. Okay. So far, give a minute or two just to see if anything comes in, but I think we did a good job, Ralph. I think.
Either we got him on the snooze alert, or yes, we've satisfied. So
yeah, that's one of the two. Yeah, we'll find out. Well, it looks like we're good on the question side of things. Thank you, Ralph, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Odessa, for setting everything up and making sure me and Ralph can navigate through everything here. And thank you to everybody for attending. Look forward to hearing from you. If you do have questions that come back, feel free to reach out to us.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Bye, Ralph.